Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. We are 1 week away from the midterm election day and maybe 8 or 9 days away from figuring out just how big a red wave we will see. Obviously, some of these races will take long to count out. Looking at you, New York State. But for the most part, I think we'll know by the end of the night just what the scope of any red wave might be, assuming that a red wave arrives. And I think, Joy Reid aside, which I might write about today, I think we can be pretty sure that we're looking at a red wave. My guess is we might be looking at a black swan event, meaning sort of a once-in-a-lifetime shift in an electorate that may not last, frankly, but certainly would be a reaction to what's been going on economically, politically, culturally over the last 2 years. Voters seem to be extremely unhappy with the status quo. There's a really interesting Wall Street Journal poll. I have a post coming up about this afternoon. I might just embed this podcast into that post, in fact. But they're showing an R+2, but that's only on registered voters. They don't really apply a likely voter model on this. But when you look at the internals on this, the right direction, wrong direction in the economy is 1971, right? 19/71, not the year 1971, although it kind of seems that way. When you look at this, 19% think we're going the right direction economically, 71% say no. That's down from, I think it was 3063 or something like that, or 3062 in August. So I think that shows you that, and that was a bump up, by the way, in the Wall Street Journal poll from, I think, the low 20s. Who thought we were going the right direction economically. That was probably largely a reaction to Congress passing the Inflation Reduction Act, which Democrats sold as, inflation reduction, which it wasn't designed to be. It was a progressive hobby horse agenda bill with a misleading label on it. And in fact, the CBO determined that it wasn't going to have any overall inflation impact. And in fact, it would be slightly inflationary in the first year. And of course, we've had 2 successive rounds of inflation reports since that bill passed, and inflation isn't coming down. So this is the politics of disillusionment. I talk a little bit about that in the post. Looking at some of the other stuff, Cook report today is moving 10 more House districts in the GOP's direction. These are all very blue House districts that look like now they're up for grabs. So when you've got that going on in a cycle, it kind of tells you that, hey, look, this is... again, Joy Reid aside, this is not these aren't suppression polls. This is an actual movement of voters. And it's, not a big shock to have a governing party lose a midterm election. It happened twice during the Obama administration. It happened once during the Trump administration. It happens pretty much in every administration. The difference will be what the scope of it is and whether or not it rolls into the Senate. And in the Senate, of course, candidate quality matters to some extent. A New York Times story yesterday sort of stressed that based on Siena polling, their partnership with Siena polling. But I think that those polls are outliers, and I'm not outrageously outliers. They're plausible, but they're on the outer marker edge of Democrat results in each of those races. And I suspect that those races are. I suspect that. Their core result, which was that more voters want to see a Republican Senate than a Democrat Senate. I think that they're actually going to be making that a reality. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think, when it comes to voting in the midterm elections. But I don't know. We'll see. That's one of the reasons why we have elections, is so that we can actually make sure that we know who won. On top of this, of course, now we have a fascinating and absolutely revolting expose from The Intercept. Li Fang, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. And I apologize for one of those is mispronounced. At least one of those was mispronounced, so I apologize for it. And Ken Klippenstein combined up on a report that shows that the Disinformation Governance Board that was supposedly torpedoed in the spring, well, it still lives. It just isn't called the Disinformation Government Board anymore. DHS is still, and the FBI are still pressuring and incentivizing big tech platforms to shape public opinion and to stifle dissent. And I mean, you have to read this report to understand just how significant this is. They're talking about using speech curbs on issues like racial justice and the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which is over a year old now. And I mean, we're not at war anymore in Afghanistan. We've pulled out entirely. Even if there was a wartime censorship plan in place, which would still be unconstitutional, by the way. It's always been unconstitutional when those have been imposed. There's no war. There's no predicate for it. So why is the government involved in free speech and public debate and dissent? And that's the question that Lee and Ken, to be safe, Lee and Ken are raising at The Intercept. The Intercept is a left-wing publication. I'll remind you, they do good work. I mean, they do their own work. They do original work, and you can judge them on their work. They actually have the briefing document from the Department of Homeland Security that outlines this program, including, as I discovered today after reading Lee's Twitter feed, how to disguise this by going through third parties so it doesn't look like government propaganda. That's an actual strategy in this document, and The Intercept documents this. Now, when you have government combining up with industry to suppress speech, that is a literal definition. That's literal definitional fascism. And you'd think with all the hyperventilating about fascism on the right that, I don't know, the guardians of the First Amendment in our, the Fourth Estate in our country might be interested in that story. Well, you'd be wrong, as I explain in a lengthy post today. This story was picked up by no one, except for Fox News. Lee went on Fox News last night, and journalists attacked him for going on Fox News and called him a fascist for going on with Tucker Carlson. And the problem is that nobody else wanted to talk to Lee or Ken, apparently, on this because nobody else covered it. There isn't a single mention of this in the New York Times. There isn't a single mention of this in the Washington Post, except a link in an unrelated story that uses the subhead rather than the headline from The Intercept, which is leaked information shows DHS plan to police disinformation online, which is about as anodyne as you can describe this story. That is, however, The Intercept's subhead on this. But if you read the entire story, it's much more disturbing. It's much more problematic, and I think it should be one of the biggest stories of the day. And yet, CNN isn't covering it. No major outlet is covering this. Fox, except for Fox. And except, of course, for us, and other independent media outlets. And that's the reason why, just to give you the pitch, it's coming. The pitch is coming. I'm not wearing a suit today, by the way. I'm doing this on my own. That's the reason why we have the VIP and VIP Gold membership club, because it helps us keep operations going in case we start seeing a squeeze from big tech platforms against our product, against our outlets. It's the reason why we do this, in case advertisers get pressured and bullied into withdrawing their support for us. We need that, frankly, to keep going. And that's the reason why we are really pressing hard in this midterm cycle to make sure that we're ready for the 2024 election, which, by the way, gets specific mention in this DHS briefing document as a particular time of interest for Joe Biden's speech police to be working with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all sorts of other things. It's very, very disturbing. Even more disturbing is the fact that the Fourth Estate is completely taking a whiff on this. Why? Because they actually want the government to control speech, and they want their consumers to shut up and listen and stop discussing and dissenting from a Democratic administration. It's absolutely disgusting. So as you can tell, we're kind of passionate about this. Andrew and I actually discussed this in today's podcast. Andrew Malcolm, of course, the prince of Twitter, the regent of redstate.com. We discussed this. We discussed the midterm cycle. Lots of other stuff coming up at Hot Air, by the way. But that kind of sets us up for today's podcast. So you'll hear Andrew Malcolm coming up next. And then, of course, one more pitch for our VIP and VIP Gold memberships, and certainly hope that you are going to join us over the next couple of years to make sure that we can still get the word out and still have these discussions, debates, and dissent to the current swamp establishment, including the current swamp media. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Now here's Andrew Malcolm. Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. As it was on Tuesdays, we talk with the Prince of Twitter and the Regent of RedState.com, Andrew Malcolm, at AH Malcolm on the Twitters. And he's still the Prince of Twitter, even in the new Elon Musk era, which has started off several bangs, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing, what a fun spectacle to watch, I have to say.
Well, okay, so there's a couple things I want to talk about. One is this, I don't know if you've seen it yet, actually. I didn't get a chance to ask you about this report from The Intercept that shows that DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI had created a portal to censor information on Facebook, to prompt Facebook to censor information that was going through it. They were also apparently secretly working with Twitter. I want to get to that in a second, but we got to talk about the Elon Musk thing, because
that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, he's now saying that he's got evidence that the board defrauded him on the transaction, that apparently one of their top executives is working with him and he's got access to the information. I wrote this post this morning about this, more or less as a throwaway, right? Just sort of fun thing to do. Because I know people are interested in it. This thing is still getting monster traffic, and it's hours later, it's still getting monster traffic on there because people, I mean, I don't know that you can overestimate the attention that especially conservative readers are focusing on Twitter right now, because they see it as sort of like the last opportunity to get a fair shake on social media platforms.
Exactly. And Musk is an eclectic character enough that you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if most people can, Warren Buffett or whatever, if they bought something like that, you kind of know in a sense what they're going to do. But Musk, you don't know. And he's kind of a maverick, and I just love it. I know he's a South American born, but we've had mavericks like that who come along with an innovative idea that a lot of people probably poo-poo, and then boom, they just take it on and do it. I mean, Henry Ford inventing the assembly line. John D. When they discovered oil in Pennsylvania, there was no use for it. So it was John D. Rockefeller who figured out, well, here's how we could use this stuff. And maybe there's more of it. Alvis Sears, I won't go into the length, but there's a wonderful story about Alvis Sears, who was a railroad station agent and ended up selling watches on trains, and said, well, why can't I do this by mail? And that was the Sears Roebuck start. And there's just been, Lee Iacocca, there's a whole bunch of people, Ross Perot, a whole bunch of people who have come along and they get rich, which is fine. But they come along and it's fascinating to watch. I can't wait every day. I was part of your monster traffic.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, actually.
Yeah, because it's just you can't get enough of him. You don't know what he's going to do. It's unpredictable. He has a sense of being a good guy from the conservative side, but he's not in anybody's pocket. And boy, I'm just fascinated. So
I'm fascinated, but I'm skeptical that things are going to change. First off, overnight. Even Musk is saying they're not going to change overnight.
No, not overnight.
We're going to take our time in trying to transition to a freer speech approach to this. the fact that it's a advertiser reliant platform is itself an incentive to keep nuttiness to a dull roar, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you can operate a platform like this without having at least some some standards by which you're going to do that. I mean, we have that in the comments section. In fact, we switched to just to be fair, I mean, we switched to a members only comment section in large part because open comment sections turn into a sewer, which you've got to go in and dump bleach in on a constant basis. Otherwise,
yeah, absolutely.
And so, and even then there are rules. There are not many of them, but there are rules and there is some accountability for that. So I get that. I know I'm not looking to say, I'm not saying you should never have any standards whatsoever, but I think when you, this brings us to the story that popped up this afternoon from The Intercept, when you are joining forces with the government to regulate conversations about a wide range of issues, that is fascism. That is literally and definitionally fascism, especially when all of the issues that Li Feng and I believe he pronounces it's spelt Fang, but I think he pronounces it Li Feng and Ken Klippenstein note. I mean, they were talking about regulating the public discourse on things like racial justice, right? The withdrawal from Afghanistan, that absolute utter moral disgrace of Joe Biden. COVID-19 vaccines. I mean, we kind of knew that was already going on because people were getting booted off of platforms for expressing dissenting views. And I mean, as I wrote, the inclusion of criticism of Afghanistan, of discussion of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, really gives the game away here, because there's no reason now to moderate or regulate that. We don't have troops in Afghanistan any longer. It's done. It's over with. So why are they going to expand this program into that area, except to suppress dissent and criticism from the Biden administration's actions in Afghanistan?
Absolutely. And you were right. You nailed it with the moral disgrace. That's what it was. That's what it remains. He insists on calling it an extraordinary success. I call it an extraordinary moral outrage that goes on. And Qatar has been evacuating some of the thousands that Biden left behind, but now they've suspended those flights for the duration of the World Cup. So there's a lot of people stuck there. The Taliban is hunting them down. Biden's people left all the biometric notes. Jazz wrote about this. All the files, personnel files of every Afghan who worked for the U.S. government and helped them, maybe the allies too. So they can hunt them down, identify them by eye color and everything else. It's just, I don't know how he sleeps at night, except he's not all there. So I guess that explains it.
Yeah, I think that explains it. I think that there's a lot of things that explain Joe Biden, and it's not all age related either. It's just Joe Biden related. The guy's always been a vacuous twit. But apparently you can't say that on social media platforms, or DHS and FBI are going to get involved, or at least here's the most ironic part of this, right? They have a document that outlines this program. And The Intercept got a copy of it. And they've got it hosted. And at the top and bottom of at least the first page, I didn't really read past the first page because I skimmed past the first page. I didn't read it carefully, but at least on the front and bottom of the cover page of this, it has the word confidential, which means that this is a classified document that they are publishing. So the government's program to, the disinformation program that the government is conducting on big tech platforms to apparently help the public is shielded from the public. It's literally a classified program that wasn't meant to be disclosed to the public. Now, nothing says transparency like that, right?
Right. You remember Obama appointed Joe Biden the head of transparency in their administration because he wanted it to be the most transparent presidential administration in history. And Joe Biden said, okay, fine. And he scheduled a meeting of all the government information people and he closed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was,
so that's his idea. I've written, and it seems to resonate with people, that Biden is just casually cruel. I don't think he has a center like that, which would help explain Hunter. But yeah. Remember with the Stephanopoulos interview during the debacle of the Afghan exit, when Stephanopoulos asked him about the Afghans so desperate to leave that they were clinging to the outside of planes and falling off to their death. Yeah. And Biden's response was, that was 4 days ago.
That was 4 days ago.
Yeah.
That was 4 days ago.
Yeah. So those deaths don't matter. I mean, they're still dead, folks. I don't.
Yeah, this guy, casually cruel is a great way to describe this. But I mean, this is, to me, I mean, we've had periods of time where the government attempted to censor speech, free speech, political speech. And eventually it got tossed out. There was the, I forget which one is which. I think it was the Alien and Sedition Act in the Adams administration during the opening days of the Republic, which eventually was shot down and is universally described as a disgrace these days. And then there was the Sedition Act in 1917, I believe it was, in the Wilson administration, which is where J. Edgar Hoover got his start, by the way, which was enforcing it for the Attorney General at the time. I forget the Attorney General's name, but basically it was using the war as an excuse to shut down political debate and dissent from official government policies, to the point where it was almost a form of lèse majesté, which was that you couldn't even criticize government officials without breaking the law, which sounds strange to people these days, but that was actually what was going on a century ago. And now we don't even have a war. I mean, there's no war here. They don't even have a war to justify this. And they're censoring public debate and suppressing dissent. I mean, really, honestly, this, if a Republican was doing this, Andrew,
impeach.
Yeah, impeach. You'd have newspapers from left coast to right coast screaming for investigations, for retribution, and how dare you. And you might even have a newspaper somewhere near the center of power that would put something like "Democracy Dies in Darkness" at the top of their newspaper. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but
yeah, that is, yeah. Well, I worked for the New York Times when they did the Pentagon Papers, and that's what they used to do.
Yeah,
the press used to be, they got special constitutional protections. The media did from the very beginning, because they're supposed to be watchdogs, and now they're playing along.
Yep. So it's very sad. It's disturbing. It's frightening that this is happening. And The Intercept is actually a left-wing publication. They do some good work over there. But I mean, these aren't radical Republicans over there that are printing this stuff. These are progressives at The Intercept, which probably more or less align with Biden policies. But they've always been a little cranky over at The Intercept. I mean, they were cranky in the Obama administration. They were super cranky during Trump's administration. They're still cranky. That's fine. I'm glad that they're cranky.
Yeah, I don't mind cranky as long as it's honest cranky.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even mind left-wing perspectives, progressive perspectives, as long as it's honest and consistent. And in the case of The Intercept with this, this was like about 6 months ago or so. They were talking about the Disinformation Governance Board. Remember that, which we were calling the Ministry of Truth. Yeah. And they finally supposedly ended that proposal because it got so much blowback, including from some people in the media. And it turns out that they were doing it anyway, just without the board. the Homeland Security, the FBI were doing this anyway. They were partnering up with these platforms, not because of national security concerns, but because of political concerns. They're trying to suppress dissent and debate. And that's un-American. I don't care how you cut it. It's un-American to do that.
No, it's politically convenient, but it's un-American.
That too. All right. We got to get to your columns over at Red State, because it's a lot of fun. If you're not following Andrew on Twitter, shame on you at this point. We've been doing this for 14 years. You guys should be following Andrew on Twitter at AH Malcolm. You would get first alerts on these VIP columns that he's got over at redstate.com. And Malcolm on the right, our DC leaders are too old. I said, they're too old.
Yeah. Well, they are. I mean, think about it. There was I've forgotten exactly when it was. It was 2 years or 4 years ago when Tim Ryan started a little revolt in the House Democrat caucus that Nancy Pelosi was too old, but she's so strong for fundraising for the members that he got quashed. And that's why he left the House, basically, to run for the Senate. But they're all old. I mean, the House leadership is all in their 80s. Grassley and Feinstein are 89. The kid in the group, let's see, Schumer, he's what, 71?
Yeah, he's in his early 70s. I mean, he's not, I mean, that's sort of the sweet spot for senators, right? Traditionally.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure, I mean, they get so comfortable and they get reelected so easily. It's 80 and 90% of the Congress gets reelected. So they get the seniority and they don't want to give that up. And they argue to the people back home that, I got a lot of clout because I've been there a long time. Well, yeah, but maybe you should leave. I worked for a governor and we had term limits. And in the second term, he said, I kind of like term limits. It's time for fresh eyes, fresh mind coming in after 8 years of doing your thing. You had your shot. You got elected overwhelmingly, and then let somebody else try. And to me, that makes eminent sense. But Congress is never going to pass that to limit themselves.
Nope.
And it's going to take a constitutional amendment, which means 37 states, and 37 states couldn't agree on a national pie. So they're not going to agree on constitutional amendment to have term limits. So the only term limits that are viable are voters. Voters set the term limit and said, you know what? Who's the guy that runs the Judiciary Committee from New York?
Gerald Nadler.
Yeah, Gerald Nadler.
In the House, Gerald Nadler, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen him interact with people? I mean, he's lost on stage. He's lost anywhere he is. He seriously. Yeah. And he's gone and he has to have people to show him, you get in this side of the car. He's
not that old. I don't think Nadler's that old, is he? Well, he might be.
Well, he's been around a long time.
He has been around a long time.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I guess you could be 55 and be there too long, but if you're 55 and you've been there a long time, maybe you want a new challenge. That's, you see Ben Sass leave. Of course, he was head of a college before, and obviously he's not going anywhere in a Republican administration.
No.
So he left to become, president of Florida.
University of Florida, right? Yeah, the Gators. Yeah. By the way, Nadler is 75. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so I mean, he's a little older than I thought he was.
He's younger. He's younger than I am, but I'm not running for office. I mean,
right.
So, but there has been funny stuff on Twitter. There were nights for a while there, a year or two ago, where I was losing 5,000-6,000 followers a night. Now, theoretically, Ed, it's possible that 5,000 people all decided that they were sick of the Prince of Twitter on the same night at the same time.
True. Can't be true. Cannot be true. Nobody gets sick of the Prince of Twitter or the Regent of Red State.
The Regent of Red State.
We should also mention your other column that was just up last night, I believe, right? Midterm election chatter has all been yada yada until right now.
I just and in a nutshell, that was just arguing that we've been talking about I wrote about the midterms in February, and that's it. I haven't written about them since because it's back and forth. We've been being played by our own curiosity and the media. Oh, look, Democrats are coming back. Oh, they're really coming back. Well, wait, no, they might not be coming back as much as you thought. And nothing has really changed. It's just the narrative that gets twisted so they can keep getting more and more hits. It's a waste of time until now. And then I look at what the scenario looks like at this point.
So speaking of the scenario, you're not going to be here next week.
That's correct, Ed.
You're going to be on vacation. I don't know anybody who takes vacation at this time of the year. How dare you, sir?
Yeah. Well, there may be a connection.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
My son is in the Air Force, and he got some leave so we can spend some time with him. It was funny. I got married almost 41 years ago, and we were going to get married in early November. But my wife, who was a copy editor on the Globe and Mail in Toronto, said, "Oh no, there's always elections in November." So we scheduled the wedding for the end of November. It was in Canada, so it didn't matter, but it was American Thanksgiving weekend. And guess what happened in 2000? I was there into December. We were going to have an anniversary that wasn't bothered by elections, and then there was an election that bothered the anniversary. But it all worked out.
It all works out. But, look, you're going to be on vacation. I was just on vacation. So this is our, as we're wrapping up, we're going to get to the jokes of the week in just a moment, because I know Andrew must have one or two of them that he can share with us that aren't midterm candidates. But I guess I have to get your projections now, your predictions now. Do Republicans win the House and the Senate, the House or the Senate? Neither?
I think they win the House fairly comfortably, and they eke out a narrow majority in the Senate. That's what I think.
Any predictions on how many Senate seats? 51, 52, 75?
Well, if I'm feeling cynical, so I'll say 51, but it could be 52, I think.
There you go. I see. I'm thinking 52 too. That's my marker, right? That to me, that's the over under. I think 52 is pretty much where things are looking at the moment based on the political environment, but we'll see. If it's a big tsunami, then it could be, I suppose, more. But the Republicans, there's 34 seats up, and I think the Republicans are defending 24. I think so. 35 and 24, I think it is 35 and 24, and Republicans had 5 retirements too. So it's not going to be easy, but it's so bad right now for Democrats. This political environment is so bad that I suspect that we are going to be looking at a fairly large tsunami coming a week from tomorrow. Well, a week from today, as this is going up on the site. So,
and here's how desperate Democrats are, Ed. They called in Obama. Obama presided over the worst Democrat House shellacking since the 30s, and they're calling him in for help. So that tells you how bad it is. They lost almost 1,000. I mean, never mind the House and Senate. They lost almost 1,000 state seats, several state houses, governorships. At one point, Republicans had 34 governorships. And I think 16 of them, they had both houses in those states. Of course, that meant that they could set the reapportionment for 2010 and 2020. So, thanks. Let's get Obama in here to help out.
Yeah. Beats Biden, though. That's what I got to say. All right.
So now they're going, who is it? They're going, aren't they all going to Pennsylvania this weekend, I think?
I think they do. Yeah. All of them are going into Pennsylvania, and it's not going to help. But yeah. So what's the jokes of the week? We got to get the jokes of the week.
Well, I got a few of them. Of course, they're all old, but Conan said President Obama canceled the White House Halloween party. He canceled after hearing that Joe Biden was coming as slutty Joe Biden. Let's see. Let's see. I thought I had another Halloween one here. Jay Leno said, I had a trick-or-treater last night, just stood on my porch for an hour, didn't knock, just stood there. I said, who are you supposed to be? And he said, an undecided voter. Kind of like that one. And let's see, Seth Meyer said, according to a new survey, 19% of Americans said they rely on their body's internal clock to wake them at a certain time. There's a term for those people, late.
Perpetually late.
Forever late. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, all right, sir. I am going to miss you next week. But that means that when you come back, we're going to be able to dissect the midterms and
that's right. That's right. Yeah, right. Next Tuesday, it's everybody will still be sucking their thumbs. Well, good luck on election night. An old timer told me when I was a young new reporter, he said, remember, son, you can always call elections. You can never uncall them.
That's true. That's true. You can't unring a bell. Same principle.
That's right. That's true. So just a quick story. I was in Oklahoma, and there was a speaker there whose name escapes me at the moment. He'd been there forever, a speaker for the House. Anyway, and there was a race, and there was some question about how well he would do. And I remembered that caution, so I didn't call it quite. So, and turns out I had bronchitis. I was feeling awful, sitting at a borrowed desk in a newsroom. So I finally called up and I said, okay, so I'm ready to call the race, the speaker race in Oklahoma. And they said, oh, we did that several hours ago. Really? Did you ever think to tell the guy that you sent to cover it? This is how professional communicators communicate. They don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I won't get into that, but listen, I work for a communications company and I work with a lot of absolutely awesome people. And we all have our communication issues as well here too. So, it's people being people, but
not on Tuesdays, Ed, not on
Tuesdays, not on Tuesdays, not with the Prince of Twitter, not with the regent of redstate.com, Andrew Malcolm at AH Malcolm on the Twitter says, in 2 weeks, we'll get back in 2 weeks then.
Okay. Have a good time. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Well, you have a good time. Stay tuned for one last message from the Ed Morrissey Show coming up next. A new era at Hot Air has begun, and with the midterm elections just around the corner, our team is ready to fight for the conservative issues and bring you election analysis with new focus and purpose. This November, we face the choice of economic ruin with Joe Biden and his progressive Democrats, or a fresh start on the basis of American strength. But we need your help now more than ever to continue our conservative reporting and mission. By becoming a Hot Air VIP or VIP Gold member, you become an integral part of our team. Not only will you get exclusive access to reporting and commentary you can't get anywhere else, you will help us in our war against big tech and social media censorship. We cover the issues that truly matter, and with your help, the left can never silence us. You will also get access to my twice-weekly discussions with Adam Baldwin on The Amiable Skeptics, where we delve deeply into the philosophies and ideologies below the surface of today's current events. And you will support the vital work of Dwayne Patterson, who knows practically everyone in politics, Tampa's Tom Jackson, who gives Hot Air readers the inside scoop on Florida politics and more, and Jazz Shaw and our newest team team member David Strong, who offer even more in-depth analysis on the latest political developments. And for our VIP Gold members, Bearing Arms Cam Edwards and I offer direct engagement with members through our live chats, the most fun hour we have in the week. We are humbled by the support our readers have already shown us, and we hope to have all of you join us to keep this mission on track. Over the last couple of months, I've been honored to lead Hot Air as our new managing editor and look forward to all that is to come. On behalf of our team, I thank all of you for your support. Help us expose and put a stop to Joe Biden and the Democrats' radical agenda. Join Hot Air VIP today and use the promo code SAVEAMERICA to receive a major discount on your VIP or VIP Gold membership. Thank you very much.